Welcome to Gazali. Today we have with us one of the most important scholars about the partition of India, Professor Dr. Ishtiaq Ahmed. He is a Professor Emeritus in Stockholm, University of Stockholm. He is of Pakistani descent, and he has been expressing views absolutely fearlessly about the partition, about Muhammad Ali Jinnah, and about many other issues connected with the partition. He has written many books: People on the Move, Punjabi Colonial and Post-Colonial Migration, The Punjab Blooded, Partition and Cleansed, and a book on Jinnah, his successes, failures, and role in history. Welcome to Gazali. I think I will start with a small work I did about partition. About 15 years ago, I was invited to Viceregal Lodge in Shimla, which was actually a place where the negotiations for partition happened.
Correct.
And I was sitting on the same table where the leaders of India and Pakistan, Jinnah and other guys were sitting, and there's a picture of them on the... And then the director of the institution requested me that I should create a work of art based on the history of that building.
I see. Well,
and one of the most important things was Harappan civilization. I made some reading on that. And I found the Dancing Girl of Mohenjo-daro is a 10 centimeters tall sculpture, which is in a museum in India. And Mohenjo-daro and Harappa are in Pakistan. I suddenly realized that the mother of our civilization, the Indian civilization, the Harappan civilization, Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, are in Pakistan. And all the great contribution of Islam is in India, like Taj Mahal, Fatehpur Sikri, and many things. So this is a paradox of partition. Can you make a comment on that?
now that you point out, it adds to my list of paradoxes. So amazingly, I mean, this is also true. Now that you mention it, it depends on how do you associate the histories of Pakistan and India with Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. The way they tell the story about Pakistan is, and I quote Muhammad Ali Jinnah from the 8th or probably the 10th of March 1944 at Aligarh, where he said, when the first Indian converted to Islam, that's when the foundations of Pakistan were laid, because his community ostracized him.
Okay.
And so that's one way of explaining Pakistan's origin. Obviously, it doesn't fit into the past, the long past, the prehistoric past of this region. So that's a way of telling the story of Pakistan. In India, of course, there are many theories about the Indic civilization, and now apparently Mohenjo-daro and Harappa are central to it. But in the past, we have ideas of the Aryans coming and they then creating a new civilization which is based on Sanskrit and the continuation and so on. So there are these variations on, but ironically, as you now point out over the historical record, the Muslim rulers established themselves at Delhi or Agra, and therefore most of the famous architecture of that time is all in what is now India, except for the tomb of Emperor Jahangir, which is in Lahore, and then in Sheikhupura we have Hiran Manar and so on. But most of the relics of the Muslim period, let me know that you say, we have Qutbuddin Aibak,
yes,
the Qutb Minar in India, but his mausoleum is in Lahore. So you have all these facts standing directly in the face of the two-nation theory and a way of looking at history in this arbitrary manner.
Okay, I'm a student of Gandhi.
Yeah.
And every time I go and deliver a talk on Gandhi anywhere,
Yeah.
there's always a question here, but he was responsible for the partition, or Nehru was responsible for the partition. So let us come to the partition. In your opinion, who was responsible for the partition?
No, I don't have an opinion. I have the evidence.
Yes.
there's a difference between an opinion and an evidence.
Yes.
And I have said that from the 22nd of March 1940 onwards until Pakistan came into being, I would like even one speech, even one oblique reference to Jinnah being willing to have a power sharing deal within a united India. I've quoted him ad infinitum, emphasizing this, underlining this, vehemently, vociferously, relentlessly. And therefore, to say that Jinnah did not want partition and it's Gandhi and Congress which forced it upon is just absurd. It's unsubstantiated, it has no basis in facts, but it's a popular theory which caught off because it was sanctified by Cambridge University. And we have a very colonial mind. Nobody went and looked at what Jinnah had been saying from the time he took up the cudgels on behalf of the two-nation theory to demand Pakistan. Sardar Patel, Nehru and Congress fought for the unity of India. And till the very end, this is what they wanted. But who could finally decide the future, the destiny of the subcontinent? It was the British. And I've given conclusive evidence, nobody can question because this is based on direct primary sources from the transfer of power, that it's within the British military finally, or the conservative elements, who thought that a divided Pakistan, a divided India with Jinnah very much willing to be part of the Western bloc of countries in the Cold War which was emerging, was a better bet than to leave India united under Nehru and the leftists and the anti-imperialists. So all that evidence is given
The
in
1937 election results were far from sort of predicting a partition.
Well, I would say inadvertently there are things called in political science intended and unintended consequences. The unintended consequence of the 1937 election was that when the Congress realized that the Muslims have not voted for the All India Muslim League, and rightly so, this is how
They hardly got any seats.
they got hardly any seats in the Muslim majority areas. So they said that the Muslims are not with the Muslim League, and they take a decision which later on, I think, played into the hands of the Pakistan sort of idea. And that is that in the UP, some claim that there was an understanding between Muslim Leaguers and the Congressites that whatever the result of the election, we'll form a coalition government. But some people question that. They say this is just an idea which has been tossed around without any basis in fact. Maybe that's true. Let's not question it. But one thing is definite. Once the election results showed that the people had not voted for the Muslim League, the Congress leadership, advised by Rafi Ahmed Kadwai, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, and some people say Chaudhry Khaliqur Zaman involved in those negotiations, the decision taken was that in the UP, if anybody elected on the Muslim League ticket must resign from the Muslim League and join the Congress before they could be considered for a post in the ministry. At that point, then I say Jinnah had the qualities of a leader which an ordinary leader would have caved in, realizing that the people are not voting for his party. He came up with a statement which he conveyed to the governor of the Bombay presidency, Lord Barebone, I think, that henceforth I'll use communalism. Communalism means that two communities have just antagonistic relationship. There is nothing common.
When did this happen? For 1,000 years, they were moving,
yes.
They were staying perfectly fine. Not perfectly, but more or less
They
fine.
were living together. They had all their different ways of, worshipping and social rules, which were not always the best to live together, but they lived in peace because apart from the orthodox way of thinking, we had a very strong tradition of the bhaktis and the yogis and the Sufi saints and the gurus all of them preached what is known in Sufi literature, and I'm sure there is an equivalent in Sanskrit literature as well, what is known as Wahdatul Wajud, the unity of creation. So on that basis, all humanity is considered one. But there is another notion, Wahdatul Shahud, that you belong to a community based on your faith. So these two ideas were around all the time. One, the orthodox, and one, popular people's way of dealing with orthodoxy, which we say is Wahdatul Wajud, creation, unity of creation. But now when Jinnah was saying that I'll use communalism, he was declaring his mission that he will encourage Muslims to oppose a united India, because that would lead to a Congress-led government, which he described as a Hindu government, and would mean permanent rule of Hindus over Muslims. Well, I have said that from 1857 onwards, you can find ideas of the two-nation theory being advanced from both sides. So the blame game would be to begin with Sir Syed, but not remember that almost the same year somebody in Bengal said the same thing. So that's pointless. I'm saying these ideas, you can trace their origin, here and there, but they were marginal to the freedom struggle which had emerged under Mahatma Gandhi, which was like accommodating everyone and fighting for the freedom of India. So on the sidelines, you have Golkar and Savarkar, and you have Allama Iqbal and Chaudhry Rahmat Ali, but this thing moves center stage after this election, and when Jinnah then decides to use communalism as the way to argue for the division of India, and he never relented from that. So that's the...
And one of the reasons you mentioned, he got open field because all the Congress leaders were in the prison, and he was alone.
Two things happened. During the Second World War, while Mahatma Gandhi was quite sympathetic to helping the British, the Congress leadership as a whole rejected it on grounds which were intellectually, political science-wise very sound, but not very realistic. And that was that you say, that the British say that we are fighting the war for the freedom of India against fascism. But we are an enslaved nation. First free us, and then we will do our duty to play our role against fascism. This sounded very good, but the British desperately needed to hold on to India because the mainstay of recruiting soldiers, one of them was British India. They had plans of recruiting 2.5 million people. So how could they transfer powers? Jinnah Sahib then went, and I've given all the evidence, saying, now you should realize the importance of the All India Muslim League. We'll support you during the war. At the end of the war, you should ensure that whatever the future of India, the minorities or the Muslims will have the right of self-determination, and they will not be forced to live in any other dispensation against their will. The British did not categorically or explicitly give such a commitment, but a very vague one, saying that at the end of the war, the minorities will not be pushed into staying in a framework which they did not approve of. And then the second major blunder, I think, and it's not very good to say in India, is the Quit India movement. The Quit India movement was a disaster in the sense that instead of the British quitting India, they were all crushed by the British state, by people of our origin who served in the British police and intelligence services, and they were brutal to the local people who were fighting. And it was crushed. The whole Congress leadership sat in jail, and they sat in jail until June 1945. For 3 years, Jinnah Sahib had the open field. And he went around telling Muslims of Islam will be annihilated in Islam. These are his words. Muslims will be obliterated. These are synonyms, but these are his words. And many times he would say that. And And by the time the 45, 46...
And he also used Quran. He said it was a sacred duty of
Yeah, that came in during the election campaign, which started in August 1945. So on the 7th of September 1945 in Karachi, he says that the Quran demands every Muslim to read it, because international law, criminal law, civil law, personal law, all laws are covered by the Quran, and that's what is going to be the framework for Pakistan.
And this is a lawyer saying.
Yes, the lawyer is saying, and he said it many times later as well. The only time Islam and Pakistan are not mentioned in one speech together is on the 11th of August 1947. Thereafter, the relationship between Islam and Pakistan organically is restored in Jinnah's speeches. So I've given all that evidence.
And the very important point you made was basically because the British wanted both to be in the Commonwealth. There was the agenda.
Yes, I've given...
Mountbatten was sent with that agenda.
Yes, and actually they say Mountbatten was very cozy with Nehru, but he was working in the best interest of the British. He cajoled Nehru into entering the Commonwealth or applying for the Commonwealth.
And there's a very nice argument which you extend.
Yes, the argument was that, look, if you don't, and Pakistan is admitted in case of war between India and Pakistan, we will be treaty bound to support Pakistan. At that point, Nehru gave in. Sardar Patel and the rest were already agreed to being in the Commonwealth. So I've given all the evidence which is in the public domain, and so nobody has been able to question them.
There are some biographers of Jinnah who sort of claim that internally he was secular. What has you to say about that?
Well, I don't know what is internal secularity, and I've given an example. If you like, I can repeat it, that Jinnah Sahab famously was a consumer of ham sandwiches and a regular daily drinker of alcohol.
Yeah.
If that is secularism, then that's one type of secularism, but which I don't think is very interesting, because Hitler, as you know, was a vegetarian, and he should be then the epitome of all that is peaceful. And would you agree to that?
And then the direct action came.
Yes, direct action is a call for to resort to arms by Jinnah. 16th, it's everything. He's saying, I'm holding a gun and I can also fire it. It's a very graphic way of giving a lead what to do. And it resulted in the first major massacre, organized massacre, first 2 days of Hindus. And then in the backlash, Hindus attacked.
Now let us come to the other subject, because we have not much time. Right now there's a big debate going on in the country about unified civil code. In Goa we already have one. Because we have still Napoleonic law here. And the inheritance law and all these things are basically not changed. So Goa we have unified civil code, and now there is a talk about unified civil code for the whole country. Now you have always argued that this is a good thing, and even in Pakistan, an Islamic country like Turkey, they have something which is more progressive.
In Turkey, the Sharia is applied only at the time of prayers and during burial. Those are in accordance with the rules of Sharia. You pray according to the Hanafi Sunni prayers in the mosque, and at burial then the state gives you a state burial for every Turk, and that is also according to Hanafi Sunni rites and rituals. That's the only time. All other relationships, legal, constitutional, and so on, are based on advanced codes of the 20th, 21st century. Although Erdogan is now trying to reverse some of the things, but I don't think he will be able to do that. In Pakistan, General Ayub Khan, later on Field Marshal, came up with very progressive Muslim law ordinance of 1962, which put this age limit that a girl must be at least 16 before she could be married, because previously the ulama position is there is no age limit in Islam. So even a child can be married off.
Yeah.
So that was changed. Then the 3 talaq thing, which is common among Muslims, was also not withdrawn but restricted, because it was required that if you want to have a second or a third wife, your previous wife should approve of your decision. And that this case will be registered with the Union Council, which is the local government, which brought things in the public. And the role of the Union Councils was to try to arbitrate between the two so that the family is not broken up. That also, I think, was a very progressive step. And because men would previously throw out their wives without being, exposed in the public. Now, this thing became public. The third is that in Islamic law, Shia and Sunni, let's say I'm a grandfather and I have 4 or 5 children. If one of my children were to die, a boy or a girl, her children will not inherit my property. It will go to the other siblings. So once again, the government argued that the purpose of Islam has always been justice. And this is unfair to the orphans who are left without any protection and any security. And so they changed the laws. And I remember the ulama and the conservatives, calling Ayub Khan renegade to Islam and so on. But he stood his ground. And that law remains in Pakistan, even when we had Ziaul Haq in power, who was a avowed fundamentalist. And I've said everybody has a daughter or a sister at home. And nobody wants the men to have this freedom to... So even Zia couldn't change the law.
I think I also believe that Uniform Civil Code will be good for the Muslim community in India.
I strongly believe it will, first of all, it will also call the bluff of those who are using it just to make political points.
Yeah.
So if you want a uniform civil code, it should be uniform and it should give the same equality and the same obligations to all citizens. So there are two, So the conservative Muslims have a way of, opposing it, but there is a political manipulation also. And I say, let's have a uniform civil code. It should be arrived at after consultation and through due process of law, whichever has been established, and then everybody should accept it.
Okay, let us come to the last part of this conversation. I think you have very interesting remedies to suggest.
Yes.
I also believe that India and Pakistan have to grow together, develop together. Animosity is not good for any country.
Quite.
The amount of money which is spent on military, if that can be utilized for education and health,
Absolutely.
I think we will be great countries. So please give us your solutions.
Well, first of all, I would say the visa regime should become more humane. Pakistanis almost never are given a visa unless they have good connections. And the same for Indians wanting to come to Pakistan. I would say, okay, if you can't trust each other, let's start with 65 and above. Some people say that, terrorists would get the visa. I said the day terrorists need a visa to come, that's the end of terrorism. So that's not a very convincing argument. So this is one. Start the Atari-Wagah border, make it open. Let goods flow freely. Pakistan invests 0, but gets 100% land tax, octroi, and all other levies that you can impose. So Pakistan also gets goods the common poor people need in the kitchen, onions, tomatoes, and so on, which are so dear in Pakistan as compared to India. And then once trade links are established, one can have joint ventures and one can build on it. And finally, I would say there are 2 ways of dealing with the Kashmir dispute. One is that you don't discuss it at the moment and start these small things to happen. Another way, which I would say a comprehensive way of doing it, would be to accept what history has decided, that the 4 wars have not led to any major alteration of the line of control. So why not make it the international border? But like Manmohan Singh and General Musharraf had agreed, these borders will be porous, so the Kashmiris could come and the divided families can start, interacting. And that should also be a way of promoting trade and understanding. And if this experience is good, we can then relax the borders in Punjab and Sindh as well. So there can be 2 states, 3, 4, 5 states called the Union of Independent South Asian States, or something like the European Union, the Indian Union. Like the SAARC Charter is already a precursor of this idea. It's the imbroglio of India-Pakistan confrontation which is holding everything back.
I absolutely agree with you. Thank you for joining us, and let's say cheers to a day when both the countries shall be friends.
Yes, and we do it with water.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Ji.